Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to our invited guests, those who join us and are part of our presentation story. Welcome to our sisters and our associates and our staff as we celebrate this very special day. Today we commemorate and celebrate the arrival of Presentation Sisters in New York Harbor 150 years ago. In our prayer ritual this afternoon, we will honor their memory and the providence of our God by remembering the journey they took and the challenges they met in bringing the charism of Dan-O-Nagle to our shore. In a very real way, the annals from which we will be reading are a record of our presentation salvation history, the intervention of God, and the abiding presence of God in our life as a congregation. It is apt then that the annals begin thus. circumstances attending the foundation of St. Michael's Presentation Convent have also appeared in print. Yet, it may be well to note here the means by which Almighty God caused it to be undertaken by the present community. Early in the year 1873, the Reverend Arthur J. Donnelly, pastor of St. Michael's Church, made application to Mother Mary John Byrne, then Superioress of Kildare Presentation Convent, for nuns to take charge of his yet unopened schools. Some pecuniary conditions proposed by him prevented her acceding at once to his request, and before these were removed, a similar application reached her from Australia. She was invited to establish a convent of our order in the town of Wagga Wagga. Mother Mary John accepted this latter proposal, but when writing to acquaint Father Donnelly that she personally declined acceding to his request, she referred him to the community of St. Joseph's Presentation Convent, Terranure, County Dublin, of whose disposition to cooperate with him she had already made herself sure. This took place in the autumn of 1873. The Terranure nuns, represented by Mother Mary Joseph Hickey, accordingly awaited some communication from Father Donnelly, but his proceedings were arrested by a monetary panic then depressing New York, and for some months he was unable to make any renewal of his project. Meantime, Mother Mary Joseph, intending to take with her but 2 members of her own community, namely Sister Mary Frances Xavier Jones and Sister Mary Teresa Reynolds, applied for recruits to the neighboring Presentation Convent, Maria Immaculata, Clondalkin. Her call was responded by Sister Mary Magdalene Keating and Mary Angela Griot, who put themselves in readiness to join the missionary band as soon as the word of command would be given. Later on, she secured the services of Mother Mary Aloysius of Tuam Convent. We now place on the altar the photos of Mother Joseph Hickey, Mother Magdalene Keating, and Mother Teresa Reynolds. Christmas of this year came and passed without any intimation of how matters stood in New York reaching the intending missionaries. At length, when all expectation had almost died out, a letter arrived from Father Donnelly, notifying that he was on the point of sailing for Ireland in order to renew in person his previous proposal. He reached Dublin a few days after his letter had come, visited Terranure on the 19th of February, 1874, made himself acquainted with his future community, and speedily concluded all arrangements necessary to ensure their proceeding to St. Michael's. He also visited Clondalkin Convent, making an equally favorable impression on that community. The nun's consent having been obtained, Father Donnelly proceeded to lay his proposition before His Eminence Cardinal Cullen, Archbishop of Dublin. Cardinal Cullen did, indeed, Write to the Archbishop of New York. These are the exact words of his response regarding the status of St. Michael's Parish. My dear Lord Cardinal, I have the honor to acknowledge the receipt of your Eminence's much esteemed favor of the 27th, asking my opinion concerning the project proposed to the Presentation Nuns by Reverend Mr. Donnelly, pastor of St. Michael's Church in this city. Permit me to say in reply that I have looked on the project favorably, although I would not counsel the good nuns to accept it too hastily. It would not be prudent for them to assume so great responsibility as the one proposed without having previously guarded against the risk of failure or disappointment. If a few only, say 5 or 6 nuns, would come out in the beginning to inaugurate the work of the schools, they would be able, after a brief experience, to judge how far it would be advisable or practicable to accept the proposals of the Reverend Mr. Donnelly in their fuller detail. It may be well to remark that the church property of St. Michael's, being heavily encumbered with debt, it would not be possible for Mr. Donnelly to purchase or build a house for the nuns. And in the event of their being willing, after proper trial, to remain and permanently establish themselves, this fact would have to be borne in mind.
This was a true and sober assessment of the financial state of St. Michael's Parish, yet the annals immediately continue. So encouraging were all the prospects of this mission, no further hesitation was entertained, and Father Donnelly returned to New York, assured of our intentions to follow him there speedily. On the feast of St. Joseph Calasancius, August 27th, the missionary party bade adieu to their dear religious home and dearer sisters of Jesus Christ. A crowd of sorrowing and applauding relatives and friends, both lay and clerical, assembled at the Kingsbridge terminal to bid a last farewell. Reverend Joseph Hickey, a brother to Mother Joseph, was appointed the guide and protector of our voyage. Our sisters in several convents en route, notably the Thurles, Castle Island, and Killarney communities, warmly invited us to visit them, but our anxiety to proceed made us decline their affectionate invitations. At Thurles, 2 of our young postulants joined us, Sister Margaret Walton and Margaret Everard. 2 others, Sister Mary Fulham and Ellen Todd, were with us from Dublin. On arrival at Cork, we proceeded to the parent house of our order, the South Presentation Convent, Douglas Street. Here we were warmly welcomed by Mother Mary Joseph Prim and Mother Mary de Sales White. We spent the night within their enclosure, hallowed by the possession of the remains of our venerable foundress.
Let us pause here to reflect on the importance of this evening before the sisters' journey. On your sheet are the names of the professed sisters and postulants who formed the pioneering band. What were their thoughts and prayers that night as they visited Nano's tomb. What emotions took over their hearts? Did they dwell on Nano's words, "If I could be of service in saving souls in any part of the globe, I would willingly do all in my power"? Place yourself among them as we listen to "I am always on the journey with you." Our voyage, now fully commenced, was too monotonous to present any incidents worth inserting here. The steamer was very much crowded with passengers, mostly Americans, returning from European tours. We found few Catholics on board, but 2 German priests, the Reverend George Steiner and the Reverend A. de Brers, Brooklyn, were not long forming our acquaintance. For the first 4 or 5 days, however, we were totally indifferent to all surroundings. Each and all, with the single exception of Mother Mary Aloysius, suffered severely from seasickness. and here we must pay a little tribute of gratitude to our reverend guide, Father Joseph Hickey, for the tender and unvarying care he lavished on his troublesome charges. Most providentially, he was not affected by the malady, and so could manifest his charity towards those who were. When about 4 days at sea, we encountered a violent storm. For an entire day and night, the vessel was driven about at the will of wind and waves. The danger was imminent, especially at night. But thank God, the city of Paris sustained all. This brief account of our sea voyage must not, however, be concluded without mentioning that once during its course, we had the privilege of assisting at the adorable sacrifice of the Mass. Of the 2 Sundays passed on sea, the first was unmarked by any outward religious observance. The weather was too stormy, and the mountain air too widespread to allow of such. But the second Sabbath was truly sanctified. For down in the steerage, in the midst of his chosen poor, the divine victim descended on the altar and was offered for the salvation of all present. The Reverend Joseph Hickey was the celebrant, the other 2 priests assisting him by steadying the sacred vessels when the ship heaved. A few eloquent words of exhortation were spoken at the conclusion of Mass, which were listened to with mute attention by the motley congregation. For not only were all the nuns and all the Catholic passengers present, but the majority of sailors, although not of our faith.
We set foot for the first time on American soil on September 8, 1874. The aurora, which ushered in the lovely feast of Our Lady's Nativity, dawned most brilliantly over the magnificent bay of New York when the city of Paris slowly steamed into it with its freight of grateful hearts, glad to have escaped all the dangers of the deep and to find themselves near terra firma again. We were gazing on the scene with feelings of admiration when, conveyed thither by the revenue steamer, our pastor suddenly appeared on deck, to our equal surprise and joy. He gave us a cordial welcome and told us he had been at Staten Island awaiting our arrival since the Sunday previous and had begun to feel anxious at the delay of the city of Paris. The custom house officers treated us with much courtesy and passed all our luggage without the examination. So as soon as the vessel came to wharf, we entered the carriages waiting for us and were driven to St. Michael's. Arrived here, we at once proceeded to view our future home. The convent certainly did not present a very gratifying appearance. Nothing was to be seen but bricks and mortar, dust and workmen. We felt a little disheartened, but when we entered the schools, this impression was removed. We could not but admire the fine classrooms, which were the scene of our labors in coming years, the grand staircase, and the spacious assembly hall. After visiting each portion of our new habitation, we were conducted by Father Donnelly to his residence, immediately adjoining the school.
After a most hospitable repast, our little band bade a temporary adieu to St. Michael's, and then separated to seek a few days' shelter from 2 kind communities in the city. Reverend Mother, with Mother's Aloysius, Xavier and Magdalene, availed themselves of the invitation extended to us by the Ursulines of St. Teresa's Convent, Henry Street. Mother Teresa and the remaining young sisters proceeded to the Convent of Mercy, Houston Street. Later on, the latter portion spent some days with the Ladies of the Sacred Heart at 17th Street Convent, during which they had the opportunity afforded them of observing the manner in which their parochial schools were conducted. At the same time, the Ursulines entertained their visitors with a trip to their mother house in East Mauritania. Our own convent being at length somewhat more habitable, we bade adieu to all our kind hostesses, and on Saturday, September 19th, joyfully entered our enclosure at St. Michael's. Our domestic arrangements were not yet of the most convenient kind. None of the cells fit for occupation, and no regular refectory. The following Thursday, September 24th, we met our future pupils for the first time. They were assembled in the church for that purpose. We at once commenced to classify them and continued this work during the rest of the week. Monday, September 28th, we opened our schools today under the patronage of St. Michael, being the eve of his feast. There was an attendance of over 600 children. Thursday, Michaelmas Day. The pupils of both boys and girls schools assembled in church this morning to assist at the Holy Sacrifice. They were afterwards addressed by the Reverend J. L. Spaulding on their duties during the coming scholastic year. The sight of so many youthful members of Christ's flock gathered in his sanctuary was very cheering and interesting to the nuns. So, too, was the evident esteem and respect with which they all appeared to regard their future instructresses.
And so it began, a legacy of teaching and healing which started with a small band of missionary-hearted women who responded in faith and trust to a need, a cry for help, on another continent, an ocean away. We place on the altar the necrology of these pioneering sisters. Some lived only a few years after arriving in New York, falling victim to tuberculosis. Others lived to old age. Many remained in the enclosure of St. Michael's, teaching not only their young students, but reaching out to hundreds of Irish immigrant women. Some of our foremothers, like Mother Teresa Reynolds, remained on Staten Island to establish an orphanage. Others, like Mother Magdalene Keating, responded to the needs of immigrants in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. In the years to come, the sisters who followed this pioneer band would establish parochial schools throughout New England and the tri-state area. They would minister in all areas of education, healthcare, social service, and chaplaincy. The call to serve in all parts of the globe would lead them to Houma, Louisiana, New Orleans, in the then segregated South, and as far away as Venezuela, Guyana, Peru, Bolivia, and Ghana, West Africa.
proclaim together a tribute to our founding sisters that is found in your booklet. In the face of fear,
they chose to be daring. In the face of anxiety, they chose to trust. In the face of impossibility, they chose to begin. To universal mystery, they opposed ministry to persons. To ignorance, knowledge. To disillusionment, tenacity of purpose. And to multiple vexations, singleness of heart. Faced with failure, they held fast to hope. Faced with death, they believed in a living future. And programmed for that future, they gave in one word, love.
and let us pray together.
Creator God, hear our prayer, that the mission of Anna Mabel and our founding sisters may continue to grow in these new times. These sisters, associate ministers, and partners in mission, believe that we are still on the sacred journey, that God is still with us on that journey, that the story of our salvation history is still unfolding. Renew our spirit and help us to become, like our founding sisters, bearers of your light and weavers of hope in our world. Amen.
But we